Welcome to a Thursday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest. Very happy to have you with us. It's interesting as we get into a very heavily, and you're talking about action all across the board in virtually all sports that are taking place during the holidays. And got NFL games going to be going all throughout the weekend. College football playoffs get underway. The evolution of public handicapping certainly has been enormous over the last several years. And you're thinking to yourself, and this is kind of why we're here as well, is to try and give you some kind of idea, some kind of guideline to make your wagers. We're not saying we're going to win every game like a lot of people do, but we're trying to just give you any kind of emboldenment. Maybe you share our opinion, maybe you think we're out of our mind, but the evolution of this as a public entity, and if you're following many of these handicappers, there's no doubt that you are experiencing just a straight up burial. It's amazing to me how much logic I read, either online. I happen to still be one of these old farts that subscribes to the newspaper. And incredible to see how many times you get this brilliant logic. We've talked about it a lot over the last 6 months here on the show. And it goes completely up in smoke usually right at the outset of the ball game. Whatever this guy was telling you, and all these crazy stats and sabermetrics and cybermetrics and calculus, trigonometry, whatever goes into their thought process. Usually, I mean, and more often than not, it's completely destroyed right at the outset of the game. If you're thinking about it too, though, I remember, and I've done a zillion pregame shows, been associated with a lot of different sports teams here in the South Florida area, hosted for many years. I mean, just ridiculously long, 3-4 hour pregame shows for Hurricane football games, Miami Dolphin football games, basketball games, whatever. And you're immersed in a ton of nonsense. Now, all of these shows tend to just lean towards trying to give you an edge when it comes to the outcome, which way, which side is going to win versus the points. Back in the day, though, when it first started out, remember how taboo it was? They would feature Jimmy the Greek on the CBS NFL Sunday or whatever they call that show with Brent Musburger, Phyllis George. Greek was on there, and Irv Cross, who didn't have a whole lot to say, although he was generally regarded as a pretty good guy. And when the Greek would come on, Phyllis George, sanctimonious as she was, and just represented everything that was pure and the raw essence of the all-American girl. Very attractive lady, certainly throughout her lifetime. And she would be so appalled that the Greek was getting even 2 minutes of time there while Musburger was lapping it up and probably on the phone with his bookmaker as the Greek was speaking. And I don't know if the Greek had an overall strong performance, but at least he was factoring in the points. Now the Greek was is cantankerous too flattering of a way to describe Jimmy the Greek? I happen to know him from various appearances at the racetrack, and I was involved in some Fugazi public company that he was representing, much to his displeasure, as it turned out. And actually, what's funny about it, even though this company was called Sports News Network, was way in advance of its time. But the guy that was running it was kind of a, unfortunately, we came to find out, somewhat of a white-collar crime guy, and he sucked up a lot of investor money that went up in smoke, and part of it was the Greeks. So he wasn't a happy guy. But cantankerous, that might be flattering, because knowing the Greek, he was just a flat-out asshole in public many, many times, and even among people that he was close with. He could be just absolutely the most horrifying guy that you could find on the streets to deal with at different times in public. But at least he was given the games with the point spread. And then you had pregame shows where you would have, Dan Marino and Phil Simms and Boomer Esiason, and they're asking him, who do you like? James Brown would be sitting there going, who do you like? And they wouldn't factor in the point spread. And you're asking yourself, how useless is this? But now that you have everybody trying to beat the system there and find a way to win games against the spread and making these kind of predictions, really, all of these columns, for the most part, they should just come with body bags, no? Because it never ceases to amaze me how dead wrong most of these public handicappers are. So we hope to stay out of that category, and that's why we feature the crew that we have here on Bury Your Bookie. And the other thing is accountability is very important in this regard, and we'll tell you if we got creamed. If we're gargling with embalming fluid here on the show, you'll be the first to know. Now, if you are betting games or props or whatever it is, and there's a zillion things on the table this week, BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all online wagering. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all of the action, the ability to watch the games, and make wagers as they happen. With the largest selection of odds of everything football, channel, UFC, boxing. Head to Bet Online today. Don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. BLEAV. It's all caps. The Believe Podcasting Network. Absolutely fantastic. For your welcome bonus on your first deposit, Bet Online. The game starts here. Did you know the Greek, Jimmy the Greek, Mike Jones?
Never got to meet him, but boy, did I follow him. I knew when he came on, what he was doing. I mean, I was back in high school. I really got to been around. He wasn't there when I got to the Giants '84. I met Madden and Summerall a lot, but I didn't really get to see him. They didn't bring those guys at the counter into the shows into the stadiums. But yeah, no, I would have always thought he was a character. There was a lot of comments about him, what kind of guy he was and all that, but never got to meet him. And I think Pete Axel was the NBC guy that kind of took over that.
He was a great guy, by the way.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was just, but Greek was pretty good. I mean, if you go back, some of the fun things of YouTube, and not to outdate myself, but hopefully our listeners, but they did actually predict that he would predict the score in a game and a point spread, and was telling you what the Super Bowl will be in the championship games. Go back and look at the videos. He was actually not bad. Like the Giants paid the Giants and the Denver game in '86. He said it'll be a 10-point favorite, and the Giants probably should win and cover. He was. So he they threw out winners. We just probably understand it a little bit more today because it's become a much more prominent type business. But I agree with all of what you're saying, that after my game last week going 0 for 3, us handicappers really don't know what we're talking about pretty much. And I can I can vent to you about this Indianapolis Colts game. I went crazy when I saw it because you saw the whole game completely flip. And then if you go to the analytics, the Denver Broncos numbers were the worst offensive numbers of any team almost in history to win by 18 points. So one play makes a game and cost me, that's what happens. So you're right.
It happened.
Crazy.
Good friend of mine, Brandon Lang, who, of course, was the guy that they based the movie Two for the Money on. And we always suggest to Brandon Lang when we see him, it has to be something to think that to cast the movie, they had Matthew McConaughey playing his lead role. And he said that's worked for him any number of times when he's been in strip clubs and he was trying to pick up chicks. They realized that the McConaughey character was actually Brandon Lang. But one of the things, he had a book out many years ago, and one of the things that he said, and this was before the gambling craze really caught fire, and was still maybe under the heading of being taboo to even discuss publicly. But he said, no matter how good you are, no matter how great of an analyst you are, no matter how much information that you have, no matter how much numerology you do, you're going to go through streaks where you just can't win.
Right.
And the key, as you well know, Mike Jones, being in this racket for a long, long time and being a degenerate gambler like the rest of us, you have to know how to survive those streaks.
Yeah.
And maybe you're betting smaller amounts of money. You're not trying to get it all back at once, but you have to kind of go into a little bit of a peekaboo style there, like you were Floyd Patterson, put the gloves in front of your face. And there was another guy who was a middleweight for some time, and he did this the whole fight. Arthur Abraham, the King Arthur Abraham. And that kind of annoying. But before you start punching again, you might have to protect yourself at all times. The old Mills Lane thing. And it's being able to survive those periods of time. I think any gambler would tell you that is essential. And money management during those periods comes into play, essential to cracking out of it and eventually being a winner, which is for some people the ultimate goal. Although, as you know, Mike, and in my case especially, I am largely fueled by self-sabotage. So it's one of those things, that you have to be very careful with. But yeah, you're going to get touched up once in a while. You have to be able to survive the middle rounds. So
Mhm.
like Muhammad Ali did in the Thriller in Manila, and you're getting pounded, but you have to keep your chin up and then make some really smart plays. So there's a lot of stuff out there, including your aforementioned Broncos here
Yeah.
in a game against Indianapolis, and they're in a tough one to decide on tonight.
Yeah.
As Chargers are, I have this state game now at 2 and a hook. That may be an old line, but it was originally 3. They're at home, although I don't think they enjoy any great home field advantage at SoFi Stadium. I don't think the Chargers have any fans in Los Angeles, do they?
Oh, no.
They would have to like dig up Jim Klein, and he would be their only fan.
Yeah.
And the Broncos playing well. They're a game ahead of the Chargers in the standings in their division. So that's a very very interesting matchup tonight. We'll get into that, I'm sure, a
Mhm.
little bit here on the show. But yeah, they the public handicappers. I mean, when they were doing it without the points, ridiculous. My first experience with Jimmy the Greek, this guy had started. His name was Floyd Kephart. I had a small television company, and we were on the balls of our ass. We had invested a bunch of money in making a television pilot that would have been the forerunner for HBO Real Sports. It was a quality piece of work. I was very proud of it. We had a chance maybe to complete, and this is going back 30 years. We were offered a contract by a company that actually made Old Spice through a big ad agency in New York, and we got like $1 million contract on the table. My buddy and I are wearing like Hawaiian shirts, like we just stepped off the set of Magnum PI, and there's a battery of Harvard lawyers on the other side of the table in this big boardroom. We were just happy that the thing was catered. Then they stick this contract in front of our face, and at the time, you couldn't rights fees for clips were an enormous cost. You couldn't use a clip of an NFL game like now. You could probably download something. What are they going to do? Maybe
Right.
catch on and they send you a cease and desist. In this case, you were going to jail if you were using these clips. If you didn't pay them, I think for 30 seconds of NFL films, it was some outrageous amount of money, like 15 grand, if you were
Mhm.
going to use it on a national television show. So we left there. We got an offer for 26 episodes, I think it was, for over $1 million. We're thinking, wow, we fucking made it. And so we leave there and we start reading the contract, and we realize that if we had fulfilled this contract or even begun to get into it, we were going to jail. It was over. So out of nowhere, some guy, this guy Kephart, hears about this business and the offer that we had, and he says, "Well, I can make this all happen for you." So we sign up with him. He also had signed up in the very beginning stages the two guys that started CompuBox, where they were putting stats on boxing matches, and they were out in New York. We were here where the guy was operating, and the first job he gives us is to go do a promo for the company, Sports News Network, with Jimmy the Greek, who was one of their investors and spokesmen. So we're all excited because they send us to the Kentucky Derby, and we're going to go on the backstretch there and meet the Greek, and he was going to do this video. So we set everything up, and we're making sure everything is right, and the lighting and everything, and the technology and the sound. And the Greek comes out there, and we couldn't have been happier. We're thinking, wow, we just came from like the gutter. We didn't know what we were going to do next. We're getting waiters' jobs. And we're thinking, wow, this is amazing. We're at the Derby. We're interviewing Jimmy the Greek here, and he's going to promote this company, and we're all going to make a fortune. And he comes out, and he's not in a particularly good mood. And he looks at us, so we're about to tape this thing. He says, "What's this for?" And we go, Sports News Network, Floyd Kephart. And to our surprise, as we had great admiration for this guy, since it looked like he was about to save our lives and our careers, he looks at us and goes, "Fucking Floyd!" Takes the shit, rips it off, and throws it on the ground and walks off.
Oh my God, that's great.
so,
Wow.
so that was one of my initial experiences with the guy, and I was an admirer of his
Yeah.
being way ahead of his time in terms of the whole gambling genre, though, and
Yeah.
who knows what he would be if he was still around today. He'd probably be
Yeah.
shot to
Right.
see the levels it's achieved. But yeah, this public handicapping is not an easy game. That's for sure. And it seems to me, and I've been saying this, the more sophisticated the analysis, the more likely the guy is to lose. Do you find that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at some guys I get some information on, and one of the big things now, as you look at the bowl games, is with the transfer portal and NIL and all that, who's playing, who's not. So one of the big handicap is not really necessarily the teams and what you see throughout the season, is who's on the field. It happened last night with UNLV. I think Cal had four offensive linemen out. The quarterback had already been in the portal. And I heard the number. I don't know if you've heard this. There's over 2,300 players in the portal right now. I mean,
Wow.
this is incredible. So how do you really gamble on this? So when you're looking at these games, I would say you might want to look at the coaching situation. Is your coach moved on to a different job? Is he out? Like there was a stat that I heard, which is very interesting, that the coaches that were still there versus a interim head coach in a bowl game was 0-12 against the number that the regular coach had beaten the interim coach last year. I don't know if that's going to play anything. Maybe some, guys who, play that devil's advocate might go the other way on this particular stat this year, but you always got to keep it in mind. And there's a couple bowl games coming up today and tomorrow where that does come into effect. So if you're paying attention out there, look at all these little things, try to figure out who's playing, who's not. I'll give you a quick one today. I think Sam Houston State is in their first bowl game. I always thought there would be great motivation to play. Line starts out high, 7 drops to 4.5. And now I'm listening to that. Evidently, the Sam Houston guys in the portal have been asked by the coach to play, and they're coming back. And so there's a rally around Sam Houston being in their first bowl game. So that would be motivation for me if I'm dumping money to play Sam Houston in this game, just because I'm going to be interested to see what happens. But you wait to kickoff, and now because of live betting, you can make a bet earlier on after you hear all the things that the quarterback's not playing and the running back isn't playing. So this is just a different time of gambling, and the information, to your point, I think we can use this as gamblers in different ways. But this particular part of the portal and where the college football is going, because to us, Jeff, growing up, you had to love bowl days. New Year's Day was the greatest day of the year. And everybody, you waited to play for this particular day in games. Today, it's not the way it is. Although this year, New Year's is going to mean something because we're going to have the 4 games or 3 of the 4 games that are going to be in the college football playoffs. So they're going to be fun to watch. But, like Saturday, I've heard there's a rumor that Saturday could be the biggest bet football day of in history. With the 3 games in the college football playoff and the 2 very good NFL games on Netflix, you got 5 really good ball games that people are going to have access to, all staggered different hours. So they say the volume should be pretty big this week. So, you look forward to it. But the disappointment is, again, not being able to figure out who's really playing, who's motivated, what's happening in the bowl games. And that's the hard part of handicapping now.
I'm hoping Netflix, from a production standpoint, learned a lesson from that Tyson-Jake Paul fight.
Yeah.
If these football games are in the status that was from the buffering that was going on and people being unable to watch it, and then all of the production flaws that they had, it will be just an outright disaster for NFL fans. But yeah, so much stuff on the table, Mike. We want to get to some of it. We talked about a little bit. I mean, this game is interesting to me because I don't know that there's any great home field advantage for the Los Angeles Chargers when they play at SoFi. It always strikes me that the other team has more fans in the stands than the Chargers do. So, I mean, as far as home field goes, do you accord them the usual 3 points? I don't know. In terms of need to win, if you want to look at that aspect, the Chargers being a game behind the surprising Broncos, that factor would have to be a check mark in their box that this would be almost desperation time for the Chargers. They lose this thing, they fall to 8-7. Now their chances of making the postseason very prohibitive. They win this game, they put themselves in a much better position with a head-to-head win. And the Broncos have been surprisingly good, and by all rights, should have beaten the Chiefs in that ball game instead of getting the field goal blocked. They could have just as easily had a W there and had one more victory and already be at the 10-win mark. 15 games into the season. So what do you make of this one? I don't know if you want to make it one of your picks, but this is a very, very, tough matchup to peg who the winner is going to be and which way to go with the points.
I'm going to look at it kind of a different way of looking at this game from more of an analytic standpoint. The offensive efficiency of the Broncos last week was 3.4 yards per pass and 2.6 yards per rush. So it was one of the worst offensive performances for a team to win by 18 points. Turnovers, Denver got a break. The first game in Denver with the Chargers, I thought the Chargers kind of dominated them. It was one of these games I was kind of surprised at. It was, to me, the turning corner of watching where the Chargers season went. I said, wow, this team is a lot better than what they think. The Chargers have been hit with injuries a little bit on the defensive front. They had a really tough game that I fell for pretty easily last week. It was one of my worst weeks all year. I loved the Chargers against Tampa, and Tampa just bombarded them. Took over second half and exploited their weak secondary. So to me, I thought Herbert was hurt. They they scored the first 3 drives and didn't score. I think they had 33 yards was the biggest drive after that. I'm going to look for a more offensive, efficient game and lean toward the over. I'm looking at lines now and giving much more respect to the opening line. Normally going back in years, I've been analyzing this for about a year and a half now. That I always loved the movement when a group got a hold of a game and moved, they were usually successful. I'm like leaning toward when the point spread opens up on a Tuesday and I look at it and say, okay, why is this going down? If I don't see any significant change at quarterback or some big injury that you're not having, and I'll talk about that a little bit later with the Baltimore-Pittsburgh game. But it's like, I look at this. In this particular game, I'm going to lean a little over. I'm going to say that Denver can't be as bad offensively as they have been. Chargers will be better. Looking at all this, I think the offensive efficiency will pick up, and I like that the line dropped to 42. That would be a small play. That would be just like an advisory thing. I wouldn't bet it myself. But if I'm looking, I just think this game is too tough. Both teams are, the struggles on Denver, they played better, but going on the road and the Chargers' domination in the first game would kind of scare me off the game.
All right, very rare 0-3 performance by Mike Jones on the show last week. And,
it happens, though, what we're talking about.
Apologies to you, and hopefully you're going to come into some money soon and refuel. But we're going to peel ourselves right off the mat here with Mike Jones. So let's get into your picks for this week.
Okay, so I'm looking at all 4 of the playoff games. Be very interesting games. My initial reaction was immediately, wow, these lines are high. I think I mentioned it last week. I've been telling people, are we making too much of the home field advantage in these games? So my thought is take the dogs and ride it out and see if we can't go 3-1 and maybe even get an upset. The upset to me lies in the Ohio State-Tennessee game. Granted, everybody thinks Ohio State's got the best personnel. What is the after effect of the Michigan loss? From what I'm hearing and people connected to Ohio State, that Brian Day's job is on the line. Does that add extra pressure? There's a factor here that Tennessee's going to have a lot more fans than people think. I heard early last week that 43% of the tickets were bought by Tennessee people. So I think there's going to be a lot of orange in that stadium because these games aren't for home field now. It's, they're gone to NCAA tickets. There's easier access, more tickets online. I like 7.5 here. I think that Tennessee will stay in this game. I thought the line would be 3.5. I feel like I'm getting over that touchdown. I think it's closer. I think the running game of Ohio State, I don't trust Will Howard, plays into the hands of Tennessee defense. The quarterback efficiency is probably going to be equal. I think Tennessee's got the players that Ohio State has. I think this is a little too high, and I think we're playing into the game being in Columbus. I think this might be less than 2.5. It was on a neutral field, so I think they're elevating the line. So that's my play on the colleges.
All right, you're liking Tennessee getting 7.5. I made the suggestion the other day, and I don't know if I'm actually going to go through with this, but I thought the way that all of these underdogs and road teams are getting a bushel of points in all of these games, if you were looking to maybe go 3-1, just take all 4 dogs,
right,
and think that probably at the worst you're going to get a split. You have a good chance to win 3 out of 4, and maybe with the points win them all. I mean, I don't know that that's a likely occurrence, but I'm thinking you're in there with a better shot. If you just wanted to throw a dart at the thing, I'd be tempted to take the points, or maybe, and this is probably the worst advice we've ever given, throw them into a teaser,
right?
A 4-team parlay, and take a small shot with a minor amount of money just to have some fun and hope that you can somehow prevail because you're getting a ton of points in these games. You add another 6 or 7. To the 4 underdogs, and you're looking at the game would have to be just an outright blowout. And I don't know that anybody's anticipating any of these games going in that direction, especially with the performance of some of the favorites late in the season in key ball games where they didn't necessarily perform at any kind of optimum offensive level. Texas being a part of that equation. Also, all right, so you're going to go with Tennessee. Plus 7 and a hook in their game against Ohio State. Ryan Day also received a kiss of death, which may be an omen. Where the athletic director said, "Oh yeah, he's coming back."
Right.
And usually that's a forebearer for the pink slip there if they can figure out the math and realize that they get some very wealthy booster, which I'm sure are plentiful at Ohio State, to say we're going to have to pay the fucking guy to get out of here. Although Ryan Day's performance is not James Franklin-esque in terms of failure in big spots, but that Michigan loss, I mean, that was
pretty
particularly
brutal.
ugly. And one of those things that you look at and you say, with a lot of coaches, you ask yourself, is this guy ever going to come through in that situation? All right, where else are we going on the charts?
Saturday with the big games, you sneak away from the college and go to the pro. I'm really intrigued with this Baltimore Pittsburgh. I've liked this rivalry for years now. It seems like a must see TV game. The first game, Lamar Jackson makes some very bad turnovers. Pittsburgh's lucky to beat him 18-16. Why is this line 6.5, and I'm hearing could see 7? Well, you got the two big injuries on Pittsburgh. I think George Pickens, we had seen how much Pittsburgh missed him. I thought one of the intriguing stats that I saw in last week's Philadelphia Steelers game was, how about the Steelers only had 2 possessions in the second half? They get a 4th and 6 with 10.5 minutes to go and punt the ball to Philly, and then a 21-play drive that doesn't come up with any points that ends the game for the Eagles. Just that physicality that maybe comes out, that wears on them. Now Baltimore gets a little laugher against my Giants last week where they could, basically to get some players back defensively and hurt. I think if Pickens and TJ Watt, who came out with a sprained ankle and they're both questionable to doubtful, don't play in this game, I think the line obviously high. This rivalry is a 3-point game either way. So 6 tells me that they're probably favoring the Baltimore needs the game more. But, Pittsburgh's been winning with smoke and mirrors most of the year. We're not really confident. Quarterback changes. A great coaching job by Mike Tomlin, coach of the year probably in the league, and now all of a sudden you're looking at, okay, here we go. Rivalry game. Baltimore's got a little edge, revenge factor. I'm leaning Baltimore in this game, and I think it could get away from Pittsburgh, provided that Pickens doesn't play or Watt doesn't play. I just don't see them recovering from the 2 best, performance players on both sides of the ball. So I'm leaning Baltimore here.
This is kind of like the Philadelphia thing last week, where supposedly there was this huge divide between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, and that was all the media was talking about. And it was the number one topic on all of these ESPN talk shows and everywhere else. Everybody had a streaming show was talking, oh, geez, they don't get along. So what happens? A.J. Brown has a monster ball game. Jalen Hurts finds his passing stroke again. After throwing for anemic yardage in the previous couple of games, he goes for like 250 plus or whatever. And it was the old fake news thing that Donald Trump is always talking about, where we're getting this now from gambling sources. I did see pictures of TJ Watt looking like he was going to be in shape enough to go ahead and play with the bad ankle. They showed him at practice yesterday, and he's kind of hopping around and making it look like he's going to shake that off. So probably a sign that he's not going to play, that the game time decision will have off the board there. I'm with you. Pittsburgh looks to me like they had like a great run. It's one of those things you see in the NFL where then late in the season when they get against really tough competition like they had last week with Philadelphia, coming right back meeting Baltimore, that maybe they come back to the pack a little bit and reality sets in. This wasn't deemed to be a really great team going into the year. I agree with you. Tomlin, amazing job once again. I don't know how he does it. He's not the most exciting coach from a play calling standpoint necessarily, but somehow manages to win and probably overachieve with this team this year. So with Baltimore rounding in the form, although very difficult to judge. Are you the guy? I thought I saw your face in the window of the cockpit of that plane that's flying over Giant Stadium.
Yeah.
Is that you, Mike Jones?
No, I'll tell you what, though. It's, I'm
it says
a different look on this. I'm a proponent of not flipping coaches and organizations as quickly as the Giants have done in the last few years. I do like Brian Daboll. I've heard a lot of great things about Brian Daboll as a football coach. Belichick gave him a little bit of a pat on the back on the show a couple weeks ago when they had Pittsburgh, Monday night game in Pittsburgh, when he said he had confidence that Brian Daboll could right this ship. The problem is when your pro personnel people can't bring in players, free agency, $60 million in free agency. Do we trust this organization, this upper management, with this $60 million in free agency and this draft? That's where it's going to come down to. Mara's got to make a decision. And then now you see this game this week. You got a rookie quarterback getting a job. They yanked Kirk Cousins after a win on Monday night.
Yes.
They're putting in Michael Penix to play. The line goes from 10 to 8.5. So now the quarterback change is supposed to revise, and now all of a sudden the Giants are under that double digits that I like to grab all the time. But I still think, with what I saw, that the Giants might hang in there because I don't know if Atlanta's that good. So there's the game there that's kind of interesting, but I don't want to get off there. But there's one stat that I want to talk about that I think is important, that guys like me used to love to bet against, and I'm losing my shirt because of this. So Carolina goes plays Dallas. I just think Dallas packs it in after Monday night game. I lose. Chargers, I think Tampa's on the road. They lose. Now the two teams I bet against this week, last week are now playing this week. So Tampa's laying 4 going into Dallas on a Sunday night game. I've been impressed with the Bucs since we gave them we got their game going when they destroyed us right after the both teams that had a bye. They've been very impressive. The offense, Baker's kind of found something. Where's Dallas mindset? Someone was trying to convince me last week Dallas had the better personnel. They're better than Carolina. They win on the field just because they're better, and I didn't buy into it. But no Diggs, no Overshawn. What is going to happen in this game? Tampa's been much more efficient indoors. They're going to get a Sunday night game indoors. Mike Evans seems to be unguardable, having game after game showing how good he is. I really like Tampa in this spot to just keep the ball rolling. They're going to realize they're going to have to win after the Falcons get their easy win over the Giants and stay on their tail and have both wins. So a tie, they would get the nod for the division. I'm really going to be impressed to see what happens here. I won't be surprised if I lose because that's the way my season's going. But I really like Tampa -4 in this spot.
I have the indelible impression, speaking of your Giants, I had a picture, a drawing by Robert Rieger, a copy of a drawing, a print of that famous shot of Y.A. Tittle after the championship game against the Bears there with the blood trickling down his cheek. He's on his knees. And that's where Giant fans are at right now.
Yeah.
They have a chance to go 0-9 at home.
And here we go. See, at our 100th season, I got the 100 season rings right behind me for the season ticket holders. And now all of a sudden, we could have the worst season history in our 100th year anniversary. It started off with those ugly uniforms. It's gone downhill since.
Gets back to an abstract theory of mine with Brian Daboll that not a lot of people would assign or ascribe a lot of credibility to, and that is coaches that lose a lot of weight that were previously perceived to be just fat slobs. Usually, after they lose the weight, and you're thinking that this is a sign that they've come to a realization where they need more personal discipline, and maybe their focus has changed and it's going to be 100% more solid on winning games. But coaches, Rex Ryan, he loses a bunch of weight. Next thing you know, he's out of football. We had it with Tony Sperano. He lost a bunch of weight. He took a team to the playoffs that was going nowhere, the Miami Dolphins. Next season, as a thin man, completely fucked. And look what happened with Brian Daboll. Loses a bunch of weight, goes from being, coach of the year type to a guy that's floundering around, and you don't know if he's even going to be back next year. So if you're a fat coach, stay fat. Just keep eating. Shovel pizza in your face. Eat a knish. Do whatever you have to do just to maintain that level of obesity. Otherwise, there's a pretty good chance that your career is literally going to be obliterated and you'll never be the same again. You might look better, but you're not going to look good in the win column.
I like it, and I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to get on my diet right now to lose 20 pounds because I'm picking them so bad. Maybe if I lose the weight, my luck will change, and I'll get some winners. So I'm with you on that, Jeff.
That was one of my motivational phrases when I was about 40 pounds heavier. I used to say to myself, lose weight, not money.
Right.
Getting buried at the track and various sports betting ventures. All right, Mike, you have information out there. I know you're really old school with this. One pick a day.
Yep.
You give the people their money back if they subscribe to your service and they lose. So at least you're not losing additional juice. So you're not getting buried with some kind of absurd vig. You paid some handicapper. So how do people get in on this system, which I find very
picksforprofits.com. We get one pick a day, and the best bet, we'll give you probably one best bet a week, and we give you money back if we lose. People like it, so people find it fascinating, interesting way of doing things. And then more of my free stuff and giant knowledge comes on the Big Gunner podcast, which we've turned the season's been so bad, we've turned it into a gamble. And last week was a pretty rough week, but we're going to bounce back this week. And, I feel pretty comfortable with my plays. And I really like what's going to happen Saturday. I think it's going to be a great energy day where we agree a little bit on the underdogs. I think there's, they got the 2 NFL games, the Chiefs going through their little line change, 7-point move in that game because Mahomes is in, Mahomes is out. So a lot of fun stuff in the gambling world for this weekend. So always look forward to a good football weekend.
Well, and all degenerates, we say this all the time, are fueled by self-sabotage. But is that in play here with my ridiculous suggestion that you tease all of the dogs up 7 points in the college football playoff games? You'd be getting 14.5 with Indiana.
Right.
I saw an interview with the Indiana coach, Signetti, right? Is his name?
Right.
He was saying, never mind. If there's a blizzard, that's even better for us because our
Right.
quarterback's from Canada, and this guy
Right.
is more than, he was chasing moose as a child, and
Mhm.
he's more than capable of throwing in bad weather games. You would then be getting in the SMU game 15 and a hook.
Right.
If you had a 7-point teaser against Penn State, which is known for their big plays, 20 yards plus, they have a lot of them, but also known as
Right. Athletes.
around their
And
neck.
SMU's got athletes. They're tough up front. They got a lot of speed. They might throw a wrinkle into Penn State. I agree. I think that line over seven's high too.
Yeah, Dabo again would be getting 18 and a hook with Clemson in a game against Texas, where Texas wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire offensively last couple of outings,
And you
and
have
he'd be
Dabo
getting 14
tournament
and a hook with
tested.
Tennessee.
Dabo tournament tested. You have a guy getting 12 points now, getting 18. Thought that line is high. You have the quarterback that's playing very well for Clemson. No one talks about. Actually beat Quinn Ewers in a high school state championship. So you have that Rob that he'll probably have some support going in there. So Clemson can hang in that game. Texas isn't beating everybody. I checked how many wins they have by more than 14 in the SEC. I don't think if one maybe. I don't know. I like that idea. I like that idea. And you start off 0-0, so you got a lot of leeway with those points too.
Send a limo for me, my friend.
You got it.
Suggesting a 14 parlay on a teaser. I mean, I definitely have lost my mind. The holiday spirit has gotten to me. Mike, we love you, man. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you again next week. Thanks for being with us here on this week's edition of Bury Your Bookie.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Mike Jones, ladies and gentlemen. Is that insane? 4-team underdog teaser. Or would you be better off going the other way? Here I am talking about public handicappers, and we're going to go out there and have you commit financial suicide by going ahead and teasing these dogs up by 7 points. All right, a lot of fun being with you. We have to run. Thanks so much for being with us. For the people at BetOnline, NoFilter.net, and, of course, Greenlight Ventures, I'm Jeff DeForest, and we'll see you next time on the next edition. Catch you tomorrow. Next edition of Bury Your Bookie.